Welcome to the TC Dojo from Single Sourcing Solutions. The TC Dojo is a Techcomm community that is driven by you. Tell us what you want to learn. You choose the topics, and we find the experts. I'm delighted to introduce you to Nancy Larby. I met Nancy in April at an STC Spectrum conference. She's an experienced technical communicator who's attentive and delicate at managing client, organization, and team cultures. She's a founding member of Tech Writers Without Borders and is an associate fellow of STC. There's so much more that I'll let her share with you. It's been my good fortune to get to know Nancy, and we're grateful she agreed to be our visiting TC Dojo master today.
Good morning, and welcome to Stretching Your Technical Communication Skills, Being More Culturally Aware. It was 1972. I had graduated high school early and went alone to France to study the language. It was my first transatlantic flight, and we had to stop in Iceland to refuel the plane. In 1972 in Paris, there were no McDonald's or even the modern architecture of a Tour Montparnasse. I sent my parents a telegram that took several days to reach them and reassure them that I had arrived safely. Trying to make a phone call in France was a real nightmare. Despite what was considered modern communication, there is absolutely no comparison to having the same experience today. Few people could speak English, and to communicate, I felt a dire and desperate need to learn the language and understand the culture. Technical communication might seem like a real stretch from my multicultural adventure. However, I learned, and I still apply this today, that seeing the world through a stranger's eyes teaches us to be better communicators. There are so many subtle differences between people of different cultures and professional backgrounds. How do we connect and understand each other? Rahel Bailey, in her 2016 keynote at LavaCon East in Dublin, said that each client has its own culture. Whether we're talking about the United Nations, an organization of countries working together, or client organizations, underlying them all is culture in different contexts. And she defines three types. There's organizational culture, team culture, and client culture. So how do we understand culture? We instinctively experience a foreign country by looking for the things we can recognize and are familiar with. But when we try to fixate on the things we don't understand, we easily grow discouraged, dismayed, maybe feel a little alienated. Trying to integrate to a different culture solely through commonalities actually slows down our cultural understanding. And in my 20 years living and working in France and working for the United Nations, I found that one key to survival was recognizing the cultural differences, the things we don't immediately understand, sometimes subtle and often not so subtle, without judgment. So when we are in a foreign country or culture, we can discover things we've never imagined before if we allow ourselves that freedom. So for example, when we watch something happening that people find hysterically funny, but we have no clue why, we can take great pleasure at just watching others enjoying themselves. We can participate even if we don't know what's going on. Even if we remain outsiders to the cultural context, we can still have a thrilling and instructive experience. Cultural awareness is a dimension of communication, and Bailey challenges us as technical communicators to stretch ourselves and become moderators and translators of culture. So to do this, we need to develop our observation skills and stay open-minded to diverse opinions, needs, and styles of expression. And I'm going to challenge you to stretch your communication skills and become more culturally aware of the organizational culture, the team culture, and the client culture. And if you don't feel like you have this experience, where do you find it? And how do you learn to be a strategic communicator in multicultural environments? So I'm going to try to help answer those questions. So to penetrate another's culture, I believe the most challenging but critical skill to acquire is learning their language, whether it be the country language or the client language. And we can't assume we fully understand what people are saying if we don't have a true understanding of the language they're using. And this learning needs to go beyond memorizing dictionary definitions, grammar rules, and mastering pronunciation. We must immerse ourselves in the meaning of the language in context. We must be willing to learn and to expose ourselves to mistakes and some humiliation. So as we know, immersion is how children learn their mother tongue. And as humiliating as it might feel to us as adults, we need to immerse ourselves in situations where we might need to become childlike in our ability to express ourselves right away. But like a child, we can also learn quickly this way. So I believe that the more artful and tasteful our understanding of the culture becomes, and therefore the language, the more sophisticated our palette of communication becomes. Language is culture, and neither has an ending. They aren't like a sports match or a business deal. They are continually evolving. Realize that culture is alive, just like language or music or art, and is constantly transforming. So being able to understand a client's culture requires the same skills we use to understand a foreign language or art. And experience has taught me that we need to pay real attention to how people converse, write, and act. And what do they like to talk about? What are the social rules? How do they manage conflict? What feelings and values are being shared? So we are entering the new cultural context without a sense of shared history, and we need to fill in the gaps. So the more we pay attention to clients and client culture, the faster we figure out what they need. And we can become client advocates in the same way that we're user advocates. In my role as a client-facing technical communicator at SAS, a statistical software company, I attend client-facing meetings where I'm asked to be a scribe and a facilitator, the person who listens, who reads between the words, and catches what is not being said in the room, the person who must translate what is meant to everyone in the room. At SAS, they depend on my notes and presence in client-facing meetings to write a clear record of the discussions and to create a safe conduit for information to be exchanged. So recognizing the sensibility of technical communicators beyond being product documentation writers is critical for technology-driven companies. It makes good business sense to marry communication and technology in order to retain client loyalty in a world that's rapidly automating and heavily competitive. So before becoming a technical communicator at SAS, I had the privilege of working for 20 years at UNESCO, a specialized organization of the United Nations, as a bilingual technical communicator. And sometimes I helped organize large international scientific meetings, but my daily work encompassed writing, researching, and creating project materials for a global scientific audience. I collaborated with people from 174 countries across all major language groups, cultures, and religions. And in addition, most of us were not using our mother tongues to communicate. Being a bilingual working secretariat, we had to communicate in both English and French. And communicating in a foreign language was a daily struggle for everyone. There were many communication styles for each language, so the meanings were often difficult to grasp. At UNESCO, I had to give up the familiar and specific, and nothing was like anything else I'd ever experienced. I had to embrace others' points of view, and the conversations required openness, humility, and flexibility. And those are three really important qualities that we need to have. So as a technical communicator in both nonprofit and for-profit institutions, I learned to listen for what was not said, what was merely implied, what was ambiguous and in need of clarification. I had to know whether there was real agreement in the room. I learned to spot confusion, gaps in perspective, and competing goals due to age, language, culture, religion, or education. And I learned how to appreciate the different communication styles and to be aware of the diversity in the room. So Rahel Bailey asks us to step back to see more clearly and to be on the outside of conversations. She says is a good place for us to be. It reminds us of the diversity in the room. And then having the observer status where we can stand back from situations and see the bigger picture, that gives us a special insight. So as technical communicators, we know how to listen for potential problems or dysfunctions. And I think that the more you practice cultural awareness, the more useful you can become to the communication being shared. And if you're in the room and being alert and observing the dynamics, you can become the relied upon translator for the organization's or the client's needs. So there is always, we have to start from the client's point of view, and there's always a period of adaptation when it comes to any change, and the culture and communication style of the organization, environment, or country that is implementing the change must be taken into account. And Rahel Bailey explains in her keynote that one symptom of a dysfunctional culture is to pay more attention to the products than to the customers. So when I'm in a client-facing meeting, I need to think about the implications for the client when installing a new software or process. It's often an uncertain and very disruptive event to their business. So Bailey advocates having strategies that address the client's point of view, listen carefully to the client's pains in implementing the new technology strategy. And when the client displays hesitation and begins asking a flurry of detailed questions, they must be addressed calmly and thoroughly to reassure them. Keep the client's priorities top of mind when discussing the business, technology, and knowledge transfer solutions that matter the most to them and help make the transition easier for them. So I think that our job is to interpret everyone's opinion in terms of how the culture thinks. So think about how you can improve the relationship with the client. And many times I have stopped conversations from looping by reframing the discussion with a question. And I was able to sense concerns and articulate them for the participant instead of the participant blurting out something and that might sound like an unwelcome complaint and criticism, or worse, feel embarrassed. So not only can your observations, whether verbalized during the meeting or in the form of written notes and organizational dexterity, serve in resolving contentious situations like he said, she said, they can be the basis for change management. They define a baseline or a starting point, and they enable the team to highlight any deviations from the culture's goals as the process or the project evolves. So I believe very strongly that you can reap the rewards of becoming more culturally sensitive. And you can do that, you can learn to do it by practice. You can practice as a volunteer. You can grow as a communicator by observing and experimenting with different cultural styles. I think that service is a noble and worthy way to have a positive impact on communities. And I am a founding member of a very young organization called Tech Writers Without Borders, which gives us the opportunity to collaborate without borders on projects for the greater good and to practice our skills. Tech Writers Without Borders has a website as well as a LinkedIn page that you can visit. So what I want to leave you with is some advice. I encourage you to take time out for yourself and travel to places you've never been, become a part of cultures that you don't necessarily understand, but you want to learn about, learn a new language or two, immerse yourself in new cultures, of course, and it doesn't have to be done all at once, and it can be experienced virtually. Get a job where you use your native tongue mostly, but you have to interact in another language with some of the people in the organization, such as management or IT or HR. And look for the opportunities in your day job to support communication for brainstorms and project interactions. Be present at the table with the client. Look at other people's styles and how they communicate and work. Be the scribe, be the listener, be the translator, be the moderator, and be the one who inspires the team to connect. And I think I want to leave you with this question. We should break the vertical silos that technology has created and use our sensibilities as technical communicators to create horizontal reaches across our society.
Excellent. Nancy, that was inspiring.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing that. Now it's time to type in those questions if you haven't already. And while you do, here's a look at what's coming up. The TC Dojo Mastermind Groups are monthly driven member discussion groups where attendees present their specific challenges to a group of their peers in a confidential, supportive environment. A mastermind is a collaborative environment where everyone lends their experience to each other. They can get feedback and advice about topics on their mind in real time from others who've been in their shoes. It's been amazing to participate in and a lot of fun too. We have 3 going on right now. One is everything Techcomm, data, topic-based authoring, the specifics of cross-references or graphics. The other 2 are product-focused on Windchill for IT and ArborText users. These sessions are not free. They're a way to guarantee commitment between the participants. You can sign up at the TC Dojo website at mastermind.tcdojo.org. We know sometimes magic is just having the time to collaborate with someone who's been where you are. Next time in the TC Dojo, we have Liat Rathbun, who will come and talk about the common language editors use to help us set expectations, focus our energy, and limit our distractions. These things all help us and affect how we tackle projects. Any suggestions on getting others to believe in our skills? For example, helping engineers realize that we understand them and have valuable feedback.
Oh, that's a great question. So I spent last week actually creating a presentation to basically frame the service of providing meeting support, which it really encompasses everything that I've talked to you about today. So it's possible that you could actually create a formal service that would explain the value that you provide, the types of work products that you produce, testimonials. And I would say also, I would volunteer to provide your services in a variety of situations that include the client in order to start to build some trust and a reputation.
Interesting. Is that where your focus is right now, what you're working on?
That was what I was working on last week, actually.
Excellent. Are you going to be presenting that are you looking to present that next year?
I think that's a great idea, Liz.
There we go. Always encouraging that. All right, here we have one. Do you have some examples of strategies for looking at things from the client user point of view? Strategies.
Well, I mean,
because sometimes it's not easy for all of us, some of us, you know?
Right. I mean, I think the most important strategy is that you have to start from their point of view. You have to actually understand what it is, what their goals are, why they've come to the conclusion that maybe they're going to adopt a new technology. So I think just finding out as much about their situations, their context, what brought them to the decision that they've made is extremely helpful, as much background information as possible. And then I think it's not easy, but it is a mindset that they have to be top of mind, their struggle, not your company's goals, but what do they actually need help with?
Right, because features and product description, that stuff's easy. It's hard to sometimes think like someone else.
Correct.
Excellent. All right, so let's see what else I've got here. I see you mentioned change management. How does that fit in? Because yeah, it's just brief that I heard you say that too.
Right. So I think this is a very important aspect to providing meeting support when the project is just getting off the ground and you're defining goals and requirements. And I think that a meeting report is something in my experience that is referred back to when begins to be scope creep and the customer uh, just keeps adding on to the list of things that they want. And at some point you have to say, well, this is not what was agreed to. And here is our meeting record. So I feel that then it becomes an issue of change management. Then they have to pay something extra for it, or it has to be, they have to, provide more time for the extra work to be done, but it has to be recognized as something that was not part of the baseline.
Much of this is about external clients. How about working with people who are internal?
I think that you can apply exactly the same lessons. I think that there should be no difference between an internal and an external client. And you might even have the advantage of already understanding their culture. And so you could be even more valuable.
It's just another way of looking at culture, I'm guessing, right? Because
Exactly.
those engineers, they're at a culture all of their own.
Absolutely. And they use a different language.
A lot of what you're saying is what we all do intrinsically. We look for what's not said, we look for ambiguity, we look for gaps, we change our perspective. It's fascinating. I never quite put it in these terms.
Right. And I was very inspired by Rahel Bailey's keynote. And I immediately could understand it and wanted to think about it in terms of my own work experience, because I've been in this, United Nations multicultural environment, but I wanted to see if I could apply it to a software company where I've been working and working with a variety of clients across the United States and Canada. And I found that it was very easy to take the principles that Bailey was talking about and apply them to our own organizational cultures. But it's not something that we think about all the time, but I feel like it gives us a really gives us an appropriate dimension to help us stretch our technical communication skills.
Excellent. We have a, how does someone get involved with Tech Writers Without Borders?
Right. So I did anticipate that question. I think, Liz, could we send out the website address?
Absolutely. I
Well,
will put links to it on the event page.
and the LinkedIn page as well. So I would say you can join, you can show your interest on the LinkedIn page for sure.
And this is, it sounds like another good way for people who are transitioning into technical writing to get some experience with a friendly set of other peers.
Right. And then the people who are transitioning out of uh, the technical writing profession, but still want to, share the skills and experience that they have.
Thanks for coming to the Single Sourcing Solutions TC Dojo, where it's all about you, what you want to learn. You should always attend a webinar live because you can't ask questions of a video. Subscribe to our TC Dojo mailing list at join.tcdojo.org and never miss another. Every month, we go out and find experts willing to share their expertise based on your votes in the TC Dojo survey. Why should we tell you what to learn? You should tell us. So be sure to vote at survey.tcdojo.org. The TC Dojo is our pleasure to host. As always, if you need more personal help, we're here to take you from the basics to mastery. See you next time.